Hey everyone, it's Aisha White, and I am here with a special guest, a returning guest, Frank James, and he is here to speak with us today about music. I had this idea of kind of a soundtrack to your life, so I wanted to know what were some meaningful songs to him and albums that he listened to over the course of his life. So, do you want to say hey, Frank?
Hey everyone, I am glad to be here again. Aisha, thanks for having me back on your channel. It's always a good conversation.
Welcome. Well, I guess do you want to get started? I don't know where your soundtrack starts. Does it start with like childhood or teen years?
Yeah, well, I think, anyone who's watched enough of my videos knows that I'm big into the Beatles. So I suppose that would be the best place to start because that was when the Beatles was like the first music that I was really like, oh, this is like music, you
Mhm.
know? Because before then, of course, I listened to music. In fourth grade, I went through an unfortunate phase where I was listening to like the top 40 pop station. All those songs. What was some of those?
Gosh.
Where Do You Go by No Mercy,
Oh, wow.
stuff like that. That was a good. That might be my first defining song. But yeah. So fourth grade. But then when I was around 10, that's when I first started listening to the Beatles and changed my life. I guess I was 9 actually, but I guess I can't remember the ages. But um, my mom had a bunch of vinyl records, and she had a few Beatles, not a lot. But she had uh, Something New, which is one of the American albums that has a lot of their early stuff. I forget exactly what's on it. Then A Hard Day's Night and Help, and then she had Abbey Road. So kind of a weird mix, like missing the whole middle part of their oeuvre. And listening to Abbey Road was probably the first hint of, oh my gosh, this is what music can be. And the thing about the Beatles is, I think why it attracts people of all ages is that when you're a kid, it's just fun. Like most of their music is very fun.
Right.
Uh, I don't know, because those albums, even though I listened to those first, don't seem as seminal in my mind to my music taste development. And it wasn't until um, my brother got the first Beatles CD of any of us. He got Past Masters Volume 1.
Mhm.
And Past Masters is the all the Beatles songs that weren't on the albums. So
Okay.
like the singles, the B-sides, and any other random things. And that was the first one where it started to those are the first songs where when I hear them now, there still is a little bit of an emotional trigger that brings me back to when I first heard it.
Mhm.
And in a way, I feel like that's the way to know when when a music, when a song or something is from a seminal time in your life or defines something or is very important, is when it has that like trigger where it brings you back.
Yeah.
So Past Masters Volume 1 had stuff from like 62 through 66 or thereabouts. And I would say the specific songs that really get me, even though they're kind of random, they're not my favorite, but they're just the ones that are the most evocative for me, are I'll Get You, which was like the B-side to From Me to You or something like that, one of the early ones. Thank You Girl, which was another B-side.
Mhm.
And then from later, a little later on, I think this was on Volume 1, is Rain, which was, I think, the B-side to Paperback Writer.
Okay.
And those three, I think, the early ones, they were all very tight harmonies, just pop perfection. And, they have the harmonica is still a part of the arrangements then. And the Beatles were still trying a little bit to imitate their American influences at that point. So it sounds it's definitely the Beatles, but it still sounds a bit like, heavy influences of other stuff. but yeah, those two, I'll Get You is especially one that I really like. When I heard it on the radio the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, this brings me back. And then Rain is from 66, I think, or maybe late 65. And have you ever heard that song before?
No, I've never heard it. I've heard Paperback Writer, but not Rain.
Yeah, Rain is like this really kind of, what I love about it is the bass in it. It's got this really cool bass riff,
Mhm.
and the drumming is really cool too. And at the end, they do this thing with like reversed vocals. And I don't know, I'm always attracted to the bass in a song, especially the Beatles songs. And in that song, the bass is just, it's hard to describe. I can't put it into words. If you listen to it, maybe you'll kind of get an idea of what I mean. But it's just all over the place. You know, there's a lot going on with it. And whenever I hear that, it takes me back to that time when I was first like starting to really pick apart what was going on in each song. Because before the Beatles, I would just listen to a song as a whole, and then listening to their music, there's so much going on in the recordings that you can listen to and pick apart, and so many nuances, that's when I started to really get interested in how things were put together and what makes something good. What are the different parts of it? So that's the start. That's the very early part of my formative music experiences.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
I was just going to turn it back around to you and ask, what about you?
Well, I was going to ask you a question. What's your preferred, I guess, mode of listening? Would it be a record player? Is it, because you know how you hear it differently depending on what you're playing it through.
Yeah, well, I would say that right now it's just in the car is my preferred method of listening. But when I was younger, yeah, I would listen to it on like, you know, the boombox, or, you know, listening to records. I think the thing about vinyl, I like vinyl a lot, but it's sort of a thing you do where you just want something in the background, but at least for me, because you're committing to a whole album at that point. So, and you know, when I was younger, I listened a lot more on headphones, and I don't do that as much anymore. But listening on headphones is where you can really start to hear all of the detail.
Right.
Yeah. So right now, yeah, it's just in the car, like a normal human being. But definitely, you get different things out of depending on how you're listening to something. You can just hear things differently. So I'm not all in on any one way.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. You say you're going to turn it back around on me. Mm-hmm. My father is a pastor, and so as a kid, we listened to a lot of gospel music and Christian music. I know a long time ago, back when your spiritual No Man's Land podcast, I remember commenting on it and be like, yes, Newsboys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a part of my influence. I have a couple cassettes when I was like early 90s, and BB and CC Winans, their brother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was what I had playing. And we had a lot of VHSs at the house, and I'd be like, it was all their videos, and so I just be dancing around the house. Because at this point, I wasn't in school yet, and I didn't have a lot to do. It was like running around the house, singing and dancing to their music. And then as I got older, I think it was probably like early middle school years, even though this was like the early 2000s, I still had a Walkman. And I
nice.
Side, and I would listen to Jars of Clay. It's called,
nice.
Yeah, Much Afraid. I love that entire cassette, so I just listened to it nonstop. When I was that age, my parents, they owned a commercial cleaning business, and we would clean, like, there's this huge Piccadilly. I don't know. Do you know what Piccadilly is? Yes, I didn't know if it was like a Southern thing or not, but it
sounds like it.
It's cafeteria style, and so you like go through the lobby and you stand in line with this tray, and it feels like you're in school, and you're choosing your desserts and your entree and the sides that you want, and then you like pay and you go into this huge dining area. So it was pretty big, or at least it felt that way when I was like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And, I just remember having the Walkman on and constantly listening to that cassette over and over, flipping it over and listening to it. And so those songs really got stuck in my head. And one of my favorite ones was it's Five Candles, You Were There. And it's just like, you were there when I needed you. You were there when the skies were wide open. And it was just a nice message, I guess, comforting to hear, especially at that age when I needed that type of encouragement. And so, like I wasn't a cool kid. I didn't have all these friends. I'm at cleaning a Piccadilly with the Walkman on my side. It's like not the picture of like coolness. So it was encouraging to have like that song, but I love it. Oh, and the previous album, I think it's just called Jars of Clay.
Yeah, the first album.
Yeah, Love Song for a Savior. I remember my older brother, like he put me on to so much music, my older brother.
Yeah.
But he was like, this song reminds me of you. And I was like, oh, and I listened to it over and over again. It became my favorite song. And yeah, he was always an influence. It was funny because it's like me and my older brother, we kind of skew towards rock music and like that. So he'd like listen to Smashing Pumpkins and Jars of Clay or whatever. And then I have an older sister and a younger brother, and they're more like shift towards R&B and rap and things like that. I like everything, but anyway, those are some of my preferences. But yeah, it was an array of things, but for many of my years, it was like Christian music, Jars of Clay, Newsboys. It's funny when you're talking about how you commit to a full album, like when you put it on the player.
Yeah.
For years in between, I would almost like pick different songs and play them. I probably, like with a CD, you can do that, and you don't have to wait and fast forward with a cassette.
Right.
And so you don't completely appreciate that experience of like sitting through the entire thing.
Right.
But, I remember my brother going out and buying Step Up to the Microphone, Newsboys album.
Oh, nice.
What is it? Entertaining Angels is like the
break. Oh yeah, I love that song.
Yeah. And so he like put it in the boombox, and I was waiting to get to that song. So I was like, that's the one I know. But he was like, no, we're gonna play it from the beginning to the end. And that made me sit in that moment, like realize, wait, it's an experience. Like sit and you listen to the entire CD, the entire album. So I think that was a moment where it like clicked, where I appreciate all of it rather than just like picking singles and going with it. Because I know even modern day, it's even easier to kind of fall into that trap because we have streaming services. Right. So you just choose whatever song you want to hear rather than listening to it in its entirety. And so sometimes I have to stop myself and be like, hey, let's appreciate the entire album and not just a couple songs.
Yeah. I mean, I love Spotify, but it definitely is kind of killing the whole idea of an album, you know? Yeah. But, well, it's interesting because on the one hand, you have Spotify is basically ubiquitous now, but also vinyl is becoming more popular. I think it's because it's that swing of people still they want to force themselves to have a whole album as an experience, you know?
Yeah.
I haven't listened to a ton of Jars of Clay. I have their first album and I love that. I just wanted to look up, I think I know the first song.
How Much Afraid?
Yeah, I think I know Overjoyed, Jars of Clay. Let me just listen to the beginning and see if that, hopefully this doesn't. Oh, wait. Sorry, it's good. Is this one I know? No, I don't know that one. Sorry. No, but that first Jars of Clay album, yeah. I mean, we'll get into this later because I would say a lot of Christian music is a very seminal music point for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Liquid, the first track on the first Jars of Clay album, that one's like, that's an epic song.
I have to go back and listen to it because I can't think of it at the moment, but yeah.
Yeah. There's something else you said that Oh, did you ever have like the fancy kind of Walkman where it had automatic skips where you would fast forward and it would automatically stop when it reached silence between songs?
Probably not.
Those were like, man, those are the fancy ones. I'm not sure if I ever had one, but I must have if I know they exist. But I had a tape player in frickin' college.
Okay.
It was
I don't
like
feel so bad. It's middle
2008.
school.
Yeah. Actually, to go back, let me go back. I'm not sure if this counts because Christmas music is
Uh-huh.
very evocative for anyone, right? Because I think it's because you only hear it from, November 15th to December 25th.
Yeah.
And so it's like a Pavlovian thing where we're all conditioned when we hear these songs to be put into the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to do like in July to just listen to a Christmas song and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm transported to December now. Uh, but I think actually the very, very first album that is still very evocative is from my mom's vinyl collection, the Time Life Christmas collection. It's like a 4-record album with a bunch of random Christmas songs. Some of them are like the big hits like Jingle Bell Rock, Feliz Navidad. But then there's also some kind of more random stuff on there like what's his name? Roger Whittaker, Ding Dong Merrily on High, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear those songs, it brings me back to childhood. So that technically would be the very first one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Before that's like when I was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
So, and we still have that record and we still put it on at Christmas time. So, yeah, so there's my true first answer. So
I have like a love-hate relationship with Christmas music.
yeah.
Like my first job, we put a local radio station on and it was playing and they like maybe November 15th. It felt like maybe the beginning of November though. And
Yeah.
it was like always playing and it drove me insane. It was like the same songs over and over again. And so I'm traumatized from that period in time. I'm like, you know what? No. Only December is when I was listening to this. But I like that as time evolves, people are becoming more creative and kind of writing their own original Christmas songs rather than a bunch of covers. I mean, there are some really good covers, but yeah, I made you a Christmas playlist a while ago.
Being the guy I am, I never got around to listening to that. I will listen to it today.
I was like,
I'm going to find that comment and I'm going to listen to it finally.
Probably never listen to that.
Yeah, I apologize.
It's fine.
I never forgot though. I know I like every week or so I'm like, I need to listen to that.
Well, that's good. I guess now it's, close to July. You can,
yeah.
Music.
But you make a good point because all of the big, hits that we, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Jingle Bell Rock, and that stuff, those were all original in their day. It's like when, in the 40s, it wasn't the same as it is now where we have this backlog of traditional Christmas music and it's like everyone's just covering that. Yeah. Back then, I mean, sure, they had all the Christmas carols, but they were like, hey, let's create some new stuff. And then those became the classics. So, and I wonder, and what do you think? Are we going to have that ever again? Or is it just sort of like randomly every once in a while, 1980, Paul McCartney will make Wonderful Christmas Time, and then that will become a hit, but then it'll be another, 5 years before anyone else makes a classic. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we probably have a lot of, covers to look forward to in the next few years. I think, if an artist comes along I don't know. I remember, what was it, like World Aid or Live Aid or something like that Do They Know It's Christmas Song?
Oh, yeah.
Song. If someone can put something like that together, I'd be down for that. Yeah. Like all the pop singers, and it has to be a big enough cause, I guess. But
yeah, that song makes me laugh when I hear it when Bono starts to sing, because it's like he was just like, let me do a stereotype of Bono. Yeah, but yeah, that's a good. That's one where I'm sort of like, I have a weird opinion about it because I can't help but like it, but I'm also like, I don't want to like it.
It didn't make the playlist, by the way. So.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, What's next?
Well, I guess we could get into the Christian music because that would be, well, all right. So to go through the minutia of the Beatles evolution. So when on my 10th or 11th birthday, I think it was my 10th birthday, I got like 4 Beatles albums. I got the middle section that I had been missing up to that point: Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour. And I think that was what really opened up my mind, because that's like that's their best work in the middle.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think standout tracks on each one that none of those really bring me back to childhood, but I do definitely remember very distinctly getting all of those and feeling like, as I unwrapped Revolver and seeing, that crazy cover, and do I have that in the other room? Anyway, for those watching, if you've never seen the cover of Revolver, look it up. It's very cool. I just knew 10-year-old me holding that. I was like, this is very important. Yeah. And the stuff that's contained in here is going to change my life. So, and yeah, that whole album from beginning to end, I listened to it so many times as a kid, but I always got scared at the end because that was when the Beatles started to experiment with like LSD and stuff, and they talked about how like the final song, Tomorrow Never Knows, which is like my favorite Beatles song now. As a kid, I was scared to listen to it because it was like, oh no, this is inspired by LSD. Oh no. But it's that song is crazy. That's got to be one of the most creative songs, even though it's just one chord basically the whole time. There's just so much going on. I love that song. But yeah, so that 10 years old, those 4 albums. And from there, I slowly picked up Beatles albums here and there until I got them all. And then I started to branch out because going into 10th grade, I transferred into a high school in 10th grade. I only listened to the Beatles. I was really weird. And and I became known for that because I was just sort of like, people would talk about this other stuff. They'd be talking about, I don't know, what were some bands out in 2002?
It doesn't matter.
Linkin Park.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't know that. I remember being in chess club one day and they had the radio on and Sunday Bloody Sunday was on. And people were like, oh yeah, do you know this song? I'm like, no, I don't listen to new music. And the teacher was like, this isn't new. This is from the 80s. So I was a bit of a dork. But then I started to get into Christian music, Christian rock. And the first Christian album I ever got was on cassette.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I guess at that point, because I went to the Christian music store to get it, I think. And I guess they were selling cassettes still. Yeah. So I got PFR's album, Them, from 1996. Have you ever listened to that one?
I don't know that one.
All right. PFR, I think, was one of the, because this is so embarrassing. I went on like Christian music, what do they call them? Message boards. AOL had all the message boards,
Yeah.
for all the different genres. I spent a ton of time on AOL when I was a kid. And I put up a post that was like, what are some Christian music bands that are like the Beatles? Because I was like, I don't want to branch out that much. And someone was like, well, PFR is very influenced by them, and they have an interesting dynamic where they had 2 songwriters, Joel Hansen and Andrew, I'm forgetting his name right now. I'm gonna have to look that up. But they kind of switched off songwriting duties, sort of like McCartney, Lennon.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm just looking up this other person who's in it. Joel Hansen and Patrick Andrew. That was his name. Okay. yeah, Them is kind of like heavy though. Like the first song, this is the song I'll recommend from that. The very first song off the album,
Mhm.
Pour Me Out. That song, like they were so heavy, man. They were like and they're one of the most like overlooked Christian bands. They have to be one of the best and musically some of the most talented that ever put out music that was Christian.
Mhm.
And I feel like nobody knows them anymore.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of them. I need to like put it in my phone now because I'm gonna forget.
Yeah, well, we're still gonna make like a playlist for people,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
true.
yeah, so that one is definitely highly recommended. Um, that was when I was 14 or so,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I don't know why I was so weird about music, but I was like worried when I put it on at first that I was like scared to turn it up. I was like, oh no, this might be too heavy for me. But
Like it was strict. Like if a song said baby, no, like we
oh
couldn't.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. So really, if my parents watch this, they're gonna be like,
You were listening to that?
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so all right, I don't want to like get into so much minutia, but after that, from about 2000, so that was 2002, that might have been 2001, but from then to about 2005, I would say was the peak of me collecting Christian music and getting really big into that. And some of the standouts there were the next album I got was Underdog by Audio Adrenaline. Yeah. Now
Love
that one is weird. Like the first time you listen to it, it's like, what is this? Because they have such a weird way of arranging stuff that you're not sure what genre it is.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that became a big one that I just listened to over and over and over again. I'm not sure what would the standout on that because there's so many hits off of that.
Well, I feel like I need to look it up.
I mean, I think just the title track "Underdog" is
Yeah.
probably the one people should check out.
Right.
Um, and then my first concert was Audio Adrenaline.
Okay.
Uh, they were on tour for something, I don't know, but I forget if that was. I'm trying to figure out when I saw them in 2003, but I think Lift is their best album. That is like perfect.
Yeah.
That's
Ocean Floor. I really like that one.
Ocean Floor is a good one. So many hits off of that one. I gotta look up the track list now. Well, I mean, just the title track is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Summertime is a really hard rock, good song. Yeah, from beginning to end, excellent album. And then I would say the biggest collection of albums I got after that was it was 2003, my birthday, and I got a bunch of Christian albums that I always like. It's very ingrained in my memory, like being in the dining room at my house and having a stack of CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was So Much for Substitutes by Down Here. It was the first Jars of Clay album, Jesus Freak by DC Talk, which is like probably one of the best-selling Christian albums. Like it went mainstream. It was so big.
Yeah.
Everyone should listen to the title track, Jesus Freak. That's a good. Colored People is also a really good song.
I love that song. Yeah.
Yeah. That band is such an interesting band where you have two vocalists with very different styles,
Right.
and then a rapper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like, even if you're not Christian, you should listen to them if you like music because it's so distinct. And what else did I get that birthday? I might have also gotten All Things Must Pass by George Harrison, which isn't a Christian album, but yeah. But like those albums, did you ever listen to John Rubin?
Yes, that sounds really familiar. Yes. Okay. There's this song like "Do Not Tell Me What I Can."
Yeah. That was his first big hit.
Yes, I remember the video with like the ice cream truck or something.
Right, yeah. So I got Professional Rapper by John Rubin.
Nice.
And yeah. What was his other big hit that was so funny? It was like
Was it? I just remember the videos. I don't know.
Yeah, that one, John Rubin. There was a, sorry, I just, doing. That was his other big one.
I'm trying to remember that one. But yeah.
Rubin, what is he dippity doing?
I truly forgot about that. But we, like, even now, just randomly, my younger brother and I will just start singing Do Not. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was like, that's the early teenage years. Oh, and Beautiful Letdown by Switchfoot.
Yeah.
That's one of the best Christian albums ever made.
I don't know, like I wasn't huge on Switchfoot. They were always around and I would listen here and there. But I don't know why the sound, I didn't love it. But maybe I just didn't listen enough. But you said
Yeah.
Beautiful Letdown. I don't think I've listened to that one. So.
Well, they changed a lot over the years. Like their early albums so their early albums before Beautiful Letdown were a bit more indie. Beautiful Letdown was like pop rock.
Yeah.
And then after that, they got into like just more straight up rock, which kind of bored me after a while.
That like Dare You to Move song, like I know it became so popular and mainstream. I didn't like it. I know that this is not like this is not critique, like review, around.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean I think when you get overexposed to the hits, you kind of lose your appreciation for them,
Some of his the later stuff I appreciate. So
yeah.
Like John Foreman's some of his solo.
Yeah, I've listened to some of his stuff too. Yeah. So that's like the early teenage years from about the age of 10 to 15 there. And is anyone still watching?
They're like, yeah, no.
All right. So what's next for you?
Middle school. This might be controversial, Frank. I don't know.
Did they say baby?
What did you say?
Did they say baby? Is that why it's controversial?
They did say baby. But it might be controversial because I'm talking to the man who is in love with the Beatles, and I've got America's answer to the Beatles. And I just want to know, like, what's your take on the Monkees? Because I've always been curious. I'm like, was he like, they're trash? Like, they're just.
They are garbage trash.
I was obsessed with the TV show. I like come home after
Yeah.
school, and there was like Screen Gems Network or something like that, and they would reruns of it, and I was obsessed, and I watched it over and over again. And in the summer, I'm trying to remember, were there marathons or there was like no Monkees, and I'd be like, what is this about? I'm home all day now, I can watch it. But yeah, I love the Beatles, or not. But I love the Monkees, and I like. Obviously, like I'm a Believer is like the really popular one, but
right.
I like I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. There's Last Train to Clarksville and Pleasant Valley Sunday. I like that.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, I was just I'm curious because I think it was like VH1. They did like a Monkees movie. They had a movie called Head, and it was really weird, and they played that and did a behind the music Monkees, and I was just like, yes to all of it. And I just got so obsessed with it all, and like knew the story and how like in the show they didn't want them to play their own instruments, but they had the ability to do it. And so I just know that it was like some people were like, the Monkees are just an imitation, they're just this fake version of the Beatles and everything. So well,
the show was definitely very entertaining because I watched it on the Screen Gems Network as well.
Oh, cool. That means I'm not the only one that was like sitting at home doing that. Because I didn't know anybody that was my age that was doing that.
Right. No, the Monkees are definitely, I enjoy them when they come on, the radio. I don't often seek them out. I think one of my favorites is, do you know I Just Want to Be Free? That one? That was in one of their shows. That's where I remember it from.
Lately, recently, I was listening to, it's like, Take a Giant Step Outside Your Mind. And I really like that one. Like, it's talking about basically like not living in your head. And I feel like it's very relevant to personality typing and all that stuff, and like being in your head. And I was like, this is a really good song. So some things that maybe I had heard but I wasn't paying attention to the actual lyrics when I was like 12, 13.
Right.
Going back and hearing it now, I'm like, okay, good song. I don't know if they actually wrote that song, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know like I know that they were all hired for the show. Like the band was put together, and I know they sang.
Yeah.
But did they play their instruments in the studio?
Mickey could really play the drums, and Mike, he could write, and I think that he could play guitar also. I'm not sure about Peter. Like, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, what did Peter do?
Yeah, obviously Davy Jones was a singer, all right. So yeah. But I mean, they were capable of doing it, but I think that was the tug of war. Is like the producers were like, no, we have these hired musicians to play your music for you.
Yeah.
You just like mouth the words, whatever. But
right. Well, here's this is totally random, but an interesting bit of trivia. I think I'm remembering correctly. Did you know Mickey Dolenz is his name, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you know, I think it's his mother invented whiteout?
Yes, now it's so random, but yes. It was like I would never be able to like pull that out, but as you're saying, I remember like in that obsession and like looking them up and watching everything related to them. I do remember that.
Random.
There's something notable about Mike too, but I don't even remember what it is. But he's a great guy, I'm sure.
Sure, he's a great guy.
And we lost Peter this year. I was like,
oh really? I missed that. Wow.
Yeah. I don't remember, maybe March or April, but yeah.
Wow, that recently.
Yeah. I was like,
wow.
He was my favorite.
I'm sad now.
Video's going downhill.
Right, yeah. And Dr. John died yesterday. I never listened to him, but I just heard the musician who died.
Yeah.
What's interesting with studio musicians, even like the Beach Boys, after a while didn't play on their albums. They sang, but they didn't play the instruments. They got sessions.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a Beach Boys album. It's probably like a compilation though. Someone bought it for me.
Yeah. Beach Boys were very good. Like especially Pet Sounds. That's obviously that's their biggest album, but yeah.
I've heard about that, was it Love and Mercy movie that's like Brian Wilson's like life story. I know John Cusack is in it and a couple other actors. I think that they're portraying him at different periods in his life, but I hear it's really good.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I hear good things.
Yeah.
You haven't seen this movie. Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of, have you seen I'm Not There, the one that's about Bob Dylan?
I've never seen it, but I'm like very aware of it. I love watching movies, but I have never gotten a chance to see that one.
I think overall the movie isn't that great, but the parts with Cate Blanchett playing Bob Dylan circa 1964-5, that is like some of the best the best acting I've ever seen in a movie. It's so amazing.
Yeah, she's a really good actress.
Yeah, just skip the other parts. Watch her.
Yeah, add that to the list. Can we add movies to our Spotify?
Yeah.
Middle school, yeah. I think Monkees consumed my middle school years. And I said the Jars of Clay, but also I think that was my introduction to the Beatles. I was introduced to the Beatles via Yesterday when I was cleaning Piccadilly. Sometimes I'd be like, love your Jars of Clay, but I have listened to the entire cassette for quite a while. And I pull off the earphones and they had music playing.
Oh.
And it was the same music over and over again. But it was Yesterday and Paul McCartney, what is it? Very popular single that is escaping me at this moment.
Silly Love Songs?
Maybe I'm Amazed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like my introduction to the Beatles. I have a Beatles record, but it's not it's a compilation. I have a lot of compilations, but Yesterday is on it, and it's like, I don't know when this was like printed, but
Oh wow, that's a cool looking cover.
Yeah. And then they're on the back, hanging out, maybe drinking tea. I think there's some smoke somewhere in it. I don't know. But yeah, so Yellow Submarine is on this one. Um, yeah, it's some cool ones. Help is on here, just like the hits, really. So
Right, yeah.
a lot of the times that was my introduction to music was like a compilation of things, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I further explored the full album. So
Right, right, yeah. The compilations are good for finding new stuff. If it's just like a bunch of different artists, you can be like, you might get a compilation with 30 songs on it and only like one, but at least it opens up something.
yeah,
Which
very
I guess is what playlists are now. Well,
right.
like,
Yeah, this is very true. Yeah.
yeah, that reminds me of going back to Christian music, like they had the Wow compilations every year.
Yes.
And then for a couple years, they had X 2003, X 2004, which was like the more rock stuff. It only lasted for like 2 years, but
Okay. Yeah.
I got X 2003, and that opened my world to a lot of random Christian bands. But yeah, compilations are very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was middle school for me. What was high school looking like for you?
Well, I was still uh, in heavy rotation with the Christian music. But I guess the biggest moment was when I first heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit,"
Hmm.
and it was because 2004 I was a junior. No, it was April, April 2004. I was a junior, and that was the 10th anniversary of Kurt Cobain's suicide.
Okay.
So going into school every day, I think I carpooled with someone else, or it might have, I don't know, but NPR was on and they did a segment on him. And I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, this is, I need this. Actually, I might have heard it before that. I think maybe that cemented it, was the 10-year anniversary. But a little bit before that, I went with the high school on like a mission trip to West Virginia, and on the bus there, or I don't, this is like so many random details. I heard the full song there,
Uh-huh.
but that song basically like opened up my mind a lot more. And I always think of it like a door being opened in my mind. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like certain kinds of music, you've just never heard it that way before, or something about it resonates with you in a way that nothing else has. And I think the through line of music that I generally like is good melodies.
Mhm.
And the thing about Nirvana is the melody was always really well put together.
Right.
I think that's what made Kurt Cobain stand out. Not only that he has one of the best voices ever in rock music, but also that he put together melodies in a way that no one else really could.
Right.
And so, yeah, Smells Like Teen Spirit was a big deal. And then shortly after that, my friend had the Nirvana greatest hits,
Hmm.
and I borrowed that from him, and that was really what cemented my love for Nirvana.
Yeah.
After that was all the big hits, Come As You Are,
Right.
Lithium.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think of the other ones.
Shaped box.
Yeah. So um, I would say that was really the biggest one, and I started to open my mind up a little bit more to other big ones. I think that was when I was like, I've really got to explore what else is out there, because I
Yeah.
realized that I had a very limited thing. I went into Christian music, but I was like, okay, I guess I've got to listen to secular music and see what it's all about.
Right.
Oh, and the other big one, my my mainstream taste was Coldplay. That's when I discovered Coldplay. I heard In My Place on the radio, and I was like, this is like the best song I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I just started to get my hands on as much. Well, at that point, the Coldplay only had 2 albums, so I just got Rush of Blood to the Head.
Yeah.
And then X and Y came out in 2005, right before I graduated high school.
Yeah.
So that album is a very defining album for my life, because it coincided with a big thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Nirvana and Coldplay, I would say, were the biggest 2 things that I discovered in the high school era.
Yeah. I remember for me, for high school, we had this like AP literature teacher, and he allowed us to be really, really creative. Like for an assignment, he wanted us to choose a form of art and just like talk about it. And I remember choosing Al Green's Let's Stay Together. And I was like,
oh yeah,
is this a cop out? Like, I was just like, I like this song and this is art. But I was like, kind of showing line by line, and the whole point of it was that he wanted to stay with the person, because I felt like at that period in time in our like high school years, no one was staying with each other, and it was like dating around and all this stuff. And I was like, this is an opposite view than like what's going on now. He wants to stay with the person. And I just remember like presenting that. And anyway, he just allowed us to be really, really creative. And I remember one day he was like, hey, I'm going to put some Coldplay on. I played this at my wedding, and I really, really like, he loved The Scientist. And so he like played that in class. And I was like, I really like this. And I own it on CD, the Rush of Blood to the Head. And it's actually a pretty good one. Because I remember one of your videos, you had one of their albums. And I was like, okay, you like Coldplay. I hadn't thought about them. And then I kind of backtrack and was like, wait, I listened to some other things that were Coldplay. I think it was just like Windows of Time. I don't remember what the name of the album was with like Paradise on it and things like that, but I remember
that's Milo Xyloto.
Yeah, it was a moment in time where I was working at the theater, and it's like everywhere I work, there's always music in the background, and it can like make me love it or drive me insane. At that time, like, oh my gosh, Paradise is playing all the time. I liked it at first, and I was just like, I've heard it too much.
I'm done.
Yeah. But yeah, my high school years, I think.
Were you still repping the Walkman at that time?
I was not.
Oh,
It was kind of like broken at that point. I had moved on to a CD player at that point.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, that's when like I talked about it in one of my other videos. I got in trouble for listening to Linkin Park on my CD player had like the radio too, and I just remember being super dramatic and like lying in the dark and listening to some radio and listening to Linkin Park, and my brother's like, what are you doing? Why are you being weird? Yeah, she's being weird. She's listening to music in the dark. And me like getting in trouble. He'd be like, what were you listening to? I'm like, this band, you don't know anything about it. And like that was the discovery that Aisha is not listening to Christian music.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think when I went off to college, of course, I lived on campus like my freshman year, and a world opened up for me.
Yeah.
It was a time of LimeWire, it's terrible, but like illegally downloading music. But I know, right? But like every genre you could think of, and like I remember this moment where my roommate was like, "You had some really good taste," and I was like, "Yeah, thank you," not knowing that I like literally had just like heard of these bands and
right.
artists just in the last year or whatever. But that's, I think, my college years was when it really expanded, and I was listening to more and more artists that everyone else knew. There was this moment in my senior year of school where we had a series of like senior events leading up to graduation, and I just remember all the seniors being in the cafeteria for this event, and it was like a poetry night, and then they were also playing music, and they were playing what is it? I think it's Nice and Slow by Usher. And I remember everybody breaking out into song, and I was like, I don't know this song, but literally everyone knew it and was like singing along to it. And I think that's the moment where I was like, oh, I'm different. Like,
yeah.
If at any point I like forgot that, I was like, yeah, I don't know that song, but it was just like pointed to the fact that the kids around me were listening to certain music at the time, and it was on the radio, and I just was like in my own world. So
yeah. Right, yeah. I can relate to that.
Yes. Um, I think sorry, I'm looking over here at my visual aid to see as a
Yeah.
as to a huge moment. Oh yes, a huge moment in my life was my freshman year, waking up to a video from Fall Out Boy, and the song is inappropriate title. I'm like a lawyer with the way I'm always trying to get you off, and but the video is like filmed in Uganda, and it was like I was like, what is this? This is just such a juxtaposition to the song and what was
Right.
going on. It's like two kids and they're falling in love, and then one kid gets kidnapped, and it gets real serious real quick in the video, and I was like, this has my attention. And at the end, they're talking about child soldiers, and that was like in the introduction to like the LRA, Lord's Resistance Army, and Joseph Kony, and then that Kony like campaign that you remember,
Oh.
like Kony 2020. I don't know if
Yeah, I remember that.
all that stuff, but like my freshman year of college, saw that video, and I was like, I need to learn more about this. There's an organization called Invisible Children, and at that point, like that campaign wasn't going yet, but I remember it was like Ryan Gosling or somebody random who was like a spokesperson for the organization in its like infancy, and I was like, this is a very important cause. So I went and researched it, and anytime I had like opportunities to give persuasive speeches and things like that, I would talk about that. And I transferred to a different college after freshman year, but I was still talking about this whole Joseph Kony thing, and it was like really close to my heart for some years. So that was a big thing, and it was all sparked by this Fall Out Boy song, because I listen to Fall Out Boy here and there, but not really. And
Right.
that was like that video was representing a moment in time where I like opened my eyes up to things that were going on in the other parts of the world, and wanted to really like spread that message to people. And when I was in college, they had a whole like they called them roadies, and it was reps who would come and talk to schools about the things that were going on in Uganda. And they stopped at our school, and eventually I even applied to like be a roadie or like an intern in their office.
Oh.
Yeah, and it came down to like me and one other person. It was so sad, but then like it folded like not long after that, because there was a lot of weird controversy too that like came out of that whole Coney thing. But hey, I was like for the cause for some years there. I was kind of intense about it, but
Wow, yeah. And
yeah,
it all came from a music video, huh?
yeah, from a Fall Out Boy music video of all.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Did you ever find that, because now that you mentioned music videos, like I was big into music videos like in high school and college. That was when YouTube was new,
yeah.
and I feel like music videos were probably a bit more relevant at that time. Did you find that you had a big interest in music videos as well, or
Yeah, totally.
yeah?
Yeah. I was always trying to, find the accompanying video for whatever song. And it's funny because sometimes when you watch a video, it can have a strong impact on you, like, that Fall Out Boy video, like I said, it seems like not related at all to the title of that song, but it's like a video can either make it for you, like make it an entire experience for you, or sometimes ruin the song, because
Yeah.
it depends on if they have like a really creative eye and they're telling the story with it, or if it's just like your general, I don't know, video where there's just like concert footage and so yeah. But I love watching videos. Like if I'm up late at night, I might be watching some music videos on YouTube and finding older videos, because I'm like behind with all these artists and things like that. Maybe I've heard the song for a while. I'm like, you know what? There might be a video for this, and going and finding it. And even, I mean, I go back and find stuff with the Beatles in it, like, visuals. I'm like, I never
Oh yeah.
look for it. I saw this really funny clip. It's not a music video, but it was like, not sure what album it was, but it was like once the Beatles grew out their hair and like had, it was like American Bandstand, I guess. And Dick Clark was in the audience, and he was asking the teenagers, like, what do you think about their looks? And people were like, I don't like it. I don't like it. Mm-mm. And they were like, not for it. And it's just so funny to see, like, their hair's all long. Like,
Wow.
yeah, experience that, man.
I mean, that is when you look back at the Beatles' history, it's quite a change in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Because looking back on it, it seems like it's easy to separate all that stuff and say, oh, it's a long time between like A Hard Day's Night and Abbey Road or something like that. And it seems like a long time because it's like goes from black and white to color.
Yeah.
But then you realize it was only 5 years.
Right.
You know, it's like that's an insane amount of change. Like every year they were different.
Yeah.
It's like you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, innovation and their willingness to take risks like that, because you get all these teenage kids that were like, you know, a couple years ago screaming and crying and fainting over them. Now they're like, they look weird now that they have long hair.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. With going with music videos, I would say when it comes to the Beatles, they did a video for Hey Bulldog.
Mhm.
That's a really good one. It's like one of the few that shows them in the studio.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, the story behind it, really quick, is they were supposed to film a promotional video for Lady Madonna, and they were like, look, this is a waste of time in the studio if we're going to do this. Let's just record a song and you film us doing it. So then they were like, let's do Hey Bulldog, and they recorded it in one session so that they could get it for the video. But it's a fun one because you get to see them kind of, you know, having fun with each other in the studio.
Yeah.
So I recommend that. Look it up on YouTube.
Okay. I will.
And all you watching.
Yes. Where were we at? I was bouncing back and forth between high school and college.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me see. What would be next for me? College. I was still listening to, it's like I kept adding on to the music at some point, or, you know, continually going into college. White Stripes was another big one I added. Beck was another big one.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the biggest phase, though, if I have to pick one, was Pink Floyd. I went into a huge Pink Floyd phase in college where I just couldn't get enough of their stuff. I got a book about them. I was reading as much as I could. I mean, as much as I could. There's like one book that was this thick about them. But yeah, I think it's because in college I did, you know, that was when I first listened to Dark Side of the Moon. Mm-hmm. And which I think is their best album. I mean, ironically, I say I went into a Pink Floyd phase, but I've still never listened to The Wall.
Oh, really?
So yeah, but it's basically Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and Animals. Yeah. Those three that I got into. And then a lot of random stuff that they did before that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure why, because I don't really listen to them anymore. It's like one of those things where you can binge on some music for a while, and then it's like, I can't do this anymore. So yeah. And then also in college was kind of when I listened to Christian music less, or I stopped trying to listen to new stuff. Yeah. And I think I just became disappointed with the quality of the stuff that kept coming out from artists I knew, as well as new artists on the scene. And I was like, it doesn't seem very creative. It seems like designed just to appeal to people. Mm-hmm. And which translates into doing the same thing over and over, and the sound becoming less unique and more generic.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, like I talked about Switchfoot, like every album they kept coming out with, the last one I listened to was like Hello Hurricane, which was 2011. Yeah. And after that, it just felt like they were getting more and more generic. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is not what I signed up for, you know? Yes. Yeah, so I still listen to Christian music from time to time, but it's the stuff that I got when in 2003.
Yeah, same.
You know, I don't really seek it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sad, but yeah, it's the case for me too, most of the time. One album that, gosh, what's his name? Sean. He's a Christian artist. I hadn't heard of him before. The album's called The Analog Files, and the Analog Sessions. I'm sorry, The Analog Sessions, and it's from 2012. But I came across it a couple years later, so it might have been like 2015. Sean McDonald, that's what it is, and it's a Christian album, but it was randomly, I came across it through Spotify, and I really, really liked it, and I played it really often because at the end of the year, Spotify is like, this is what you've been listening to, and
Right.
it was a lot of that. And I was like, oh, okay. But that was a really interesting one. I think that I like, you know, I sought it out and I was like, okay, I like this album. But for the most part, it is like Sunday mornings, I like, before church, I like getting ready to the sounds of all these songs that I listened to when I was younger. And it's fun sometimes to be like, oh yeah, I remember that song, and adding it to the playlist. So I think
Right.
same here. I think my musical taste has just expanded so much, and there's so much music that I'm like, you know, looking for new artists, and yeah. So I think my taste has just grown over the years more and more.
Do you find that you are generally always looking for new stuff, or is it sort of like stuff finds you?
I think stuff finds me. I mean, Spotify is a huge, you know, help with that. A tool. I'll be listening to a certain song, and you know, either their recommendations, or sometimes I'm like typing in a song to look for something else. I'm like, that title seems weird and something I've never heard of. Let me go look that up. And so I just end up like going down this rabbit hole and finding this artist that I wasn't intending to look for in the first place. So yeah, I think it's just like it happens to me, and I'm not necessarily looking for it. And I do get into those periods of time where I'm like, I'm only listening to pop music from, you know, like
Right.
thousands or something like that. But sometimes, you know, you have to break yourself out of that to
Yeah.
accept something new. So, yeah.
Right, because you just get fatigued after a while. You're like, you think about listening to something, and you're like, I don't want to listen to that.
Yeah. Yes. I almost forgot one of my favorite artists, and I feel like I've never asked anybody's opinion on him. So I feel like you love him or you hate him, but his name is Bryce Avery, and his band is called the Rocket Summer. And he used to be on tour with like Warped Tour with these emo bands and things like that. And my very first concert, it wasn't until 2009, and it was his concert. Well, he was like the opening act, or it was like a combination tour with
Yeah.
band called Forever the Sickest Kids, which I don't know where they are and what they're doing right now, but he was the one I was there to see. So I remember distinctly, I guess it was 2008, and I was riding in the car with my boyfriend at the time, and he had his iPod with like a bunch of random songs, and there was this song called Never Knew, and the lyrics just stood out. It was like, hello, good friend, I want to be next to you, for my head, for my heart, it's true. And I was like, this is so different than everything else that's playing right now. And it just like stood out. And I was like, grabbed the iPod, and I was like, what is this? Who is this? And I'm looking it up. And from there, like then on, it was just like nonstop me finding his old albums, and up until, you know, everything he had created up until that point. And Hello, Good Friend is, I think it's like, that's the like cover for it. I want to say it was 2007, no, 2005, but you know, it was some year, I was late on it, but yeah, it was really effective. He's a Christian artist. He's one of those, like, he never denies it, but you know how there's like a Christian band, and then there are Christians that are in the band, and
Right, yeah.
and that is a band. He's his own band. Like, he plays all his instruments on his album, so like guitar and drums and like everything. And now he's
Really?
Yeah, producing his own albums and everything. But his like he went mainstream for a second in time with this song called So Much Love, and like everybody, like that's the mainstream song that he had. That's like not my favorite song by him. It's good, but it's not my favorite. That one and the song called Do You Feel, those were the ones that like were really popular. But yeah, his music just, I like his writing, and there were periods in time where like the songs were relevant and helped carry me through periods of time with like things that were going on with my family and everything. And so my college years, a lot of it was the Rocket Summer, and I still listen to him now. Like he's got a new album coming out in August. I was texting my friend, the Michela, the last video that I did, it was an interview. It was with a friend that I met at one of his concerts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like we met at the concert, and I think a couple years later we saw each other again. It's like, hey, and I went to Chattanooga where she lives and just like met up with her and interviewed her, and we hadn't actually sat down and talked to each other. So now we have each other's numbers, and we're like texting like, hey, did you get tickets? Yeah, I did. So we're
Oh, that's cool.
in September. But yeah, he's a really like nice guy. I don't know what else to say. He's really talented though. Like he plays all the instruments, like I said, on his album, and you just gotta listen to it. It's really encouraging, and nothing feels generic to me. So even though there are themes of faith in there, there's still just like real life things. He loves Paul McCartney. Like there's
Oh, nice. Wow.
yeah, there's a song called Japanese Student. It's on. Sorry, I've got like multiple albums. I think it's okay. It's on his album of Men and Angels. It's like a glare, but sorry, it's like really dirty. But yeah, of Men and Angels, and it's called Japanese Exchange Student. And he's saying like I might as well be a Japanese exchange student because people want to know me when I show up. Like he's like interesting and everything, but then the thrill wears off, and they just want to call and ask him, can you get tickets to like Paul McCartney? Tickets to Beyonce, because they assume that just because he's in the music industry, he knows Paul McCartney. He's like, no, I don't know him. Like, gotta pay for these tickets too. So anyway, yeah.
Wow, I've got to check him out. That's like I really like it when people play multiple instruments. I think that's really cool when someone has like total control over the.
Yeah, he's really, really talented, and like seeing him live is an experience. I paid for like a VIP meet and greet thing one year, and he played this song. It's a song called Light, and it was acoustic, and it was just powerful, just standing there and listening to it. But yeah, it gives me so much energy, like going and seeing him play, because he's very much so like, no one's dancing, like no one's moving, like we gotta up the energy of the crowd, and it's just always good vibes. So yes, I definitely recommend the Rocket Summer and seeing him live.
After our interview, I'm definitely gonna check him out.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
The earlier years are very like pop punkish, like, and
oh yeah.
As he got older, he matured. My favorite album from him probably is, I guess I never even considered that, like what is the favorite, but the album is called Life Will Write the Words, and it's got some really great tracks. Scrapbook and Ashes Made of Spades. That's like my favorite song. I think it's the last song on the album. So anyway, we'll be adding it to our, Spotify playlist. So you'll see it there.
Nice.
Yep. I think that's, at this point, I would go to like modern times. So maybe what are you listening to now?
Well, it's interesting. As time goes on, I feel like there are fewer and fewer things that are like a big deal, musically. I guess that's part of getting older, isn't it? Like my mom doesn't like any music after 1980. So, well, what I've been getting into big time recently is Wings, actually. So it's not really expanding much, but I guess one of the other big seminal albums was like in 2002, I got Wingspan, which was Paul McCartney's, hits after the Beatles. And, but I had never really listened to the albums. So starting around a year ago, I started to get into the albums more and listen to like Band on the Run in its entirety, and listen to, all the other random albums that got not so good critical acclaim. That scares me when I know that an album wasn't well reviewed. I'm like, I don't want to bother with it, but I was like, okay, let me just try it out. So I had listened to a lot of his stuff that wasn't in Wings, like, McCartney and Ram, which is just him. And then some of his more recent stuff in the last 15 years, like Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. I'm pretty good at keeping up with the new stuff he comes out with. But the 70s, when he was in Wings, I was just like, But I've listened to like Wildlife, which is the first Wings album, Red Rose Speedway, Band on the Run, Back to the Egg, these are all, and even McCartney too, which isn't Wings, but I had never really listened to it because I heard it wasn't well reviewed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that's what I've been into, and there's some really good stuff, and I'm like shocked that there are some really good songs on there that weren't singles, but you just never hear them anywhere. And it's like, why have I never heard this? Like, I have Sirius XM in my car, and there's the Beatles channel, which I listen to a lot, and I'm like, why do they never play these songs?
Yeah.
It's like they play such a limited amount of music, and I'm like, you have a huge catalog of stuff to pull from, and you play the same stuff over and over again. They play Do You Want to Know a Secret like every 2 hours, and I'm like, come on, no one likes this song anymore, please do something else. But yeah, like off of Wildlife, the title track is really good. I mean, I can understand why these albums weren't well reviewed, because Paul McCartney has a tendency to not finish songs.
Okay.
So he'll put out a song that you can tell it's just like, what's going on? But yeah, Wildlife off of that first album is really good. Red Rose Speedway, the first track, Big Barn Bed, is like an amazing song. I don't know why I've never heard it before. Then some of his later stuff in Wings, like London Town, I'm like, this isn't very good. But then off of McCartney 2, Coming Up is a really cool song, but it was a big hit for him. So it's not like obscure.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Coming Up was the song when John Lennon heard it, it inspired him to write music again, because he had taken a break from songwriting, and he heard that song from Paul, and he was like, I gotta get back into this, like this is a good song, I want to do it again, you know. And unfortunately he died shortly after that. But yeah, so that's what I'm into now. So it's sort of expanding, but not really. It's like a safe expansion into something that's kind of a known quantity already.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I just feel, I don't know if you feel this, but sometimes I feel the obligation to fully explore someone's catalog, someone's discography. If I say I like them and then I realize there's like a 10-year span where I don't know any of their work, I'm like, I've sort of got to get into that. So
yeah, this is my full concern with this video. I was like, I hope I know enough about these artists. Like, then I'm like, yeah, I like them, but yeah,
I sort of like I sort of disrespect it when people, especially when it comes to the Beatles, they're like, yeah, I love that band. And then you'll say, what about this hit? And they don't know it. And I'm like, okay.
Do you really love them?
Yeah. So I feel like I have to kind of be very familiar with it all. So yeah, so that's what it is right now for me. What was that?
I was saying that's completely understandable.
Yeah. So what about you? What's been the recent rotation?
So recently the 1975, they're Brits too. I went to their concert at the end of May. It's hard to like place them as far as genre. It's like pop music, but also there are rock and even R&B influences.
Yeah, I think I've heard some of their stuff.
Yeah, I like Matthew Healy. He's the lead singer. His writing, it's like social commentary, just him being like upfront about struggles, because he had like, I think, a heroin addiction at some point. And there's this one song, and it sounds almost like a love song. It's one of the singles. It's Not Living If It's Not With You. And I don't know how many people actually realize that he's talking about his heroin addiction and how it was like talking from the point of view of some like a character that he's put as a like stand-in for him. But I like his songwriting and the messages behind his music. So it's like music with a message. And so yeah, that's what I've been listening to lately. This album's called A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. And then the previous albums are like really lengthy titles. Like there's one, I Love It When You Sleep, For You're So Beautiful But Unaware of It, I think is the name of it. And then the other one's just like the 1975. But yeah, those are really good ones. I've been listening to Hozier. He's like Scottish, I think. Have you heard of Hozier?
Yeah, I've heard of him. I haven't.
He was really. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say the only reason I heard of him is because someone left a comment once. It's like, you look like him. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't, but.
I was like, yeah, you don't. He's got an album called Wasteland Baby. I got it on vinyl. And
Uh-oh,
really
baby.
popular.
I said, uh-oh, baby.
I know. I'm gonna hide that one away. But yeah, it's a really good album. His last one, this is his, the sophomore albums are always like the challenge, because if you have a huge hit, and Take Me to Church was his huge hit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, all right, what are you gonna produce following that? And that was
Yeah.
a really good album. Like, part of it feels full circle because he's got this single called Nina Cried Power, and it's about like struggles with civil rights and things like that. And Mavis Staples is on there, and Mavis is featured on the BB and CC song from my childhood. And I was like, yes, this is all coming around. I'll Take You There, I think is the song. So I just enjoy that. That's my own enjoyment. But if any song off the album I would suggest it's a song called Almost, and it's so good. And then there's a song called To Noise Making, and I was listening to it with earphones on, just like digitally, and it made me cry, which is a new experience for me. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Feeling. It's like a single tear rolled down. This is such a beautiful song. To Noise Making is literally a song about singing, and it's just the lyrics and like detail in the lyrics. I was like, this is a beautiful song. Yeah, that's what I'm listening to. And a lot of other things. I go back and forth. I like 80s music. Yeah. Yes.
80s music, man. That's the one I can't get into.
What? Oh, my heart.
Yeah, I mean, I like some U2 and a little bit of the Smiths, not much, and that's about it.
Yeah, I like the Smiths too. So maybe not so much like the stereotypical 80s music and like, oh, let's put on, the top 40 hits and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It gets old real quick, but there's some things that, as I say, I'm trying to think of examples. I like the Psychedelic Furs, but I think that's probably because they, one of their big hits, Pretty in Pink, is from, like the soundtrack for the movie Pretty in Pink. And I love 80s movies also, and so that's probably got a lot to do with it too. So yeah.
Right, yeah. I think I had the same experience as you, when you worked in these places that played music all the time. In college, I worked in the scene shop at the theater, like building scenery, and the technical director played 80s music all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that made me, it cemented my dislike for 80s music. I was like, nope, not. Anytime I go back and, visit to say hi and he's got the same songs playing, I feel like the anxiety rising in me.
Well, he sounds like he's stuck in the moment in time, like we were saying, like only listening to the same song. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
But I think that, I mean, like, by no means does that cover everything that I listen to, because it's a random assortment of things, but it would be probably
to
talk about. So, but I think these were the ones that were had an effect, like were really effective as far as points in my life or bring me back to, with memories and time. So.
Right, yeah. No, I totally agree, because I'm thinking of all these other albums that I love, but it's like, I don't know, like Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash is a big one, but it's like, I don't know if I can really pin that to a time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. And then Spotify has totally fractured the songs I like. So it's like, I like this one song, but it's one person. So
right. I'm glad you had the suggestion to combine albums and songs, because I was struggling, like when I was compiling these songs. I was like, this is not enough, and this does not sum it up. And it was a weird combination of things too. When I was trying to go like song by song, I was like, no, this doesn't work.
Right, yeah. Well, it just seems to me like, especially people our age are probably the last people to actually listen to albums, at large. I feel like kids who are growing up now probably don't listen to them as much unless they are like really into music. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe even our contemporaries would still have that kind of playlist mentality, because I guess when we were like, I can remember when I was in high school, that was when CD burning started to become something that like anyone could do.
Yeah.
And so that was when like playlists started to become a thing. And then the iPod came out shortly after that. Though I can remember people having MP3 players before
Yeah.
that, like crappy little, yeah.
Yes.
So I think we're at an interesting age where it's like albums were sort of more the typical way to listen to something. Whereas now you almost wonder if when artists make albums, if they are crafting an album or if they're just trying to throw a bunch of songs together to
Well,
carry the hits.
yeah, it seems like it for some, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's great when you find an artist who wants to make an album,
yeah.
who wants it to be like cohesive
Hmm.
and is actually thinking about track order and stuff, and isn't just, doesn't just have two singles and then they have a bunch of filler around it.
Yeah, definitely. I like when they're telling a story. That's what I like about the 1975, and it's like it's the concept, and he clearly is passionate about what he's writing and this full idea, and he carries it out from beginning to end with the album. So
Yeah.
I forgot about I guess they could be like not honorable mentions because we're not ranking them, but like breakup albums. Reliant K, Reliant K's Forget and Not Slow Down was I thought it's a really good album. I can't remember, it's like 2009, I think, but it was like coming off the heels of a breakup, and it was just very relevant. I think that the lead singer actually was engaged or something, and broke up with this.
Oh no.
And so it was like true to his life. And there's a couple songs on that album. It's the title track, Forget and Not Slow Down, is really good. It just, he's talking about perspective. It feels like it's the end of the world, but like, when you place perspective on it, it's not. And all these things, and it's just like really relevant to me at that time. And I was like, yes, this is an awesome album. So yeah, that was really good. And then All Things Must Pass, I was listening to that earlier in the year, and I really like that one too. Behind That Locked Door, that one, like, because I was feeling at that time like with breakups, how you're like, well, I'll never give my love to anyone.
Yeah.
And it's almost like George is pleading you to be like, no, don't be jaded, and like the world needs your love, not just like a person, like you have love to give to people in general. And I was like, oh wow, like when I thought of it in that way, I was like, this is a really encouraging song. It makes me feel better already. So I really like that one. And then of course things like My Sweet Lord, and I didn't even pay that much attention to the one that you shared, so I was excited to share it in your community tab.
Yeah, Run of the Mill.
Yeah, and I was listening to it. I was like, I do like the interesting structure of the song, but it was like when I was listening to the whole album, not necessarily paying attention to that one. Like,
yeah, me too. When I first got that album, that was one I kind of skipped. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But recently I listened to it again, and that's the song that always jumped out to me. And I'm like, wow, this is such a good song. Why did I always skip this one?
Yep.
So
that's really
yeah.
Yeah. So.
I think All Things Must Pass is the strongest Beatles solo album of all the Beatles, even though overall I prefer Paul McCartney, and I think George's solo career kind of went downhill from there. I think that album was the best that any of them came out with after the Beatles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's see. Honorable mention, is that what we're doing now?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Or are we doing breakup albums?
Breakup albums. Do we need the entire category for that? But
yeah, I don't know, because I'm not sure. That's a good question. Huh. Oh, well, here's a couple. Or here's an artist that was ruined for me by a breakup. Simon and Garfunkel, I don't really like them anymore because with my girlfriend in college, we listened to them all the time because she had a record player and that's all she had was Simon and Garfunkel. So I'm triggered now when I hear Simon and Garfunkel.
Can you listen to Paul Simon on his own?
I haven't really listened to his solo career. I guess it hasn't, I don't know. There's something about his songwriting that doesn't push my buttons, you know. Like I should give it a try because everyone loves him. And he's one of the greatest American songwriters, but I just never got into it.
Yeah.
But Simon and Garfunkel is ruined for me forever. And then after one breakup that wasn't particularly bad, it was like a mutual breakup, but it was sort of like the end of an era. Mm-hmm. I got big into Lindsey Stirling. Okay. And it was like an intense fandom, very into her music, listened to all of her stuff, got really into her vlog channel. Mm-hmm. And then I went to a concert of hers and it was like, that was sort of like the end point. And after the concert, I never listened to her again.
She's a violinist, right?
Yeah, the dancing violinist.
I played violin in middle and high school.
You played violin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very nice.
Pick it up. I sold it. I don't know that. I don't know if my parents know that either. So a lot of revelations happening in the
They keep asking you, so how's your violin going? Oh, great. I got rid of it 10 years ago.
Yeah, I need to pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah, but with Lindsey Stirling, I just liked her music. I never really watched her music videos. Uh-huh. And honestly, if I were to be her, consultant, I would say just drop the dancing and do the music. Like, honestly, because when I saw her in concert, I was like, this dancing isn't crisp enough to be a thing for you. I mean, I know this is how you made it, but it's like,
it's okay.
Yeah, it's like the truth hurts. But she's like a really extremely talented violinist. And should just focus on that, in my opinion. Hi, Lindsey, if you see this, I'm open to be hired. So
I don't know, you might lose some subscribers or something. They're like, no, we love Lindsey, and you don't critique her dance. So wait, was that a breakup album, Lindsey?
Yeah, after the breakup, I just got into her music, and I think in a way. I wasn't watching her music videos, but I was watching her Lindsey Time channel, which is like her behind the scenes kind of stuff. And I think I was just like madly in love with her. And I think it was kind of just a replacement for that part of my life. I wasn't like depressed after that breakup because it was something that we both felt like, yeah, this isn't working out. So, and it was amicable. Mm-hmm. So there was nothing really bad about it, but I just had a big time crush. That was really it. And then seeing her live, I don't know, it just felt like a bookend, and then I just never listened to her again.
I do think it's interesting though that you chose instrumental music as an album. I don't know, I'm trying to think of instrumental, albums that I've listened to as of late. I can't really recall something, but I mean, I really like it. Having played in an orchestra, I really like instrumental music also. But
yeah, instrumental is good because you avoid people writing dumb lyrics. So that's I hate it when it's like, oh man, this song is really good, but these lyrics are so dumb, I can't get past them. I can get past them sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the Beatles weren't always the greatest lyricists, but they never made stuff that, well, occasionally some of their stuff was kind of dumb, but I'll forgive it. But, you can cover up lyrics that are kind of so-so with good music. But if the lyrics get too bad, there's no saving it. A couple of years ago, I got into electronic music. So it's what would you call it? Down tempo. Mm-hmm. There's a artist called Thruppence that I really got into, and it's just kind of this lo-fi down tempo music that I found really interesting. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I got into this contemporary composer. He's kind of a younger guy named Ola Yalo,
Okay.
who's like a pianist. And I listened to a bunch of his stuff, and I wish he toured more. Maybe he does, and I just missed it. But I would definitely go see him live if he was going around. One of my favorite tracks of his is called January, and it's very sad. Oh, that might be sort of a breakup thing. That's another one that was kind of ruined for me, because I shared it with the person I was dating at the time, and then afterward I was like, this reminds me too much. But yeah, January by Ola Yalo is just like this really moving piano piece. It's very short. It's like 2 minutes long. His whole album, Stone Rose, is a lot of short piano pieces that are all very interesting and moving, and I would highly recommend that. But yeah, that is, yeah, so instrumental stuff, when you can find good instrumental music, that is something I'll latch onto immediately, because it's just pure, it's just pure music. There's no message to get in the way, you know?
I like, well, some soundtracks. There's a French movie called Amélie, and the soundtrack for that is really good too. It's instrumental.
Yeah, I've heard that. A lot of people say that Amelie is good. I need to check it out, because I've heard a lot of people talk about that one.
It's very whimsical, the movie itself, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Right. I mean, everything you bring up reminds me of another one. The most recent movie soundtrack that I loved is Phantom Thread. Did you see that movie? It was Daniel Day-Lewis's like last movie. It came out at the end of 2017.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and Johnny Greenwood, who is from Radiohead, composed the music for it, and it is so good. The best tracks on it are House of Woodcock and Alma.
Okay.
Like, sometimes he uses dissonance. I mean, he uses dissonance a lot, which works in a movie, but when you're listening to it on its own, it's like, But those two tracks are beautiful, and yeah, so that would be the soundtrack I would say most recently has jumped out to me.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So much music to talk about,
Like run the gamut.
We could have like an 8-hour conversation, basically.
No, I mean, people would watch it, but yeah.
Get that watch time.
Yeah. Thank you for talking to me about music. Yeah.
This was a lot of fun. This is like, I hope no one else is watching who I've been on a video with, but this was my favorite.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to just talk about music and like what makes it good to you.
Yeah.
Like what brought you into it, and then the story around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soundtrack to our lives. Yeah. I mean, it's something that everybody can connect with in some sort of way, and then you learn things. You're like, oh, I've never heard this album, never heard of this artist before. Go check it out. So it's like one of the best ways to connect with people. So yeah, fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and to everyone whose videos I was on, of course, you are my favorite as well. Just I don't know. I just love talking about music so much that it's like, it gets me excited. It gets me jazzed up. That's why I'm like energized now. What that reminded me? Oh, the soundtrack. That just reminded me of another thing. This is a very new thing, like a very modern thing. Like before vinyl came out, before people could listen to recorded music, they didn't have this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They couldn't really talk about it. They'd be like, my favorite song is that one that my dad plays on his fiddle. It's like,
yes.
So having recorded music that everyone can listen to is a very new thing in human history. It's fascinating when you think about it.
Yeah. Just like, like books also, how things before the printing press, and it's like handwritten, and there only being one copy of it and things like that. So that
right.
mode of communication. Yeah.
It's a great time to be alive.
It is. Yeah. Seriously, like everything's at your fingertips, and literally you're like, oh, let me look that up, let me Google it. And so any artist that you haven't been exposed to or have limited knowledge of, you can go and find their catalog somewhere. I remember it was a big deal when like the Beatles came to Spotify. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
like that huge announcement, like they're coming, and I was like, oh, okay, and just kind of
that was
dived
just like 2 years ago.
in like that. Yeah,
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 the Beatles are always behind because they can, because they're the Beatles. They can do whatever they want.
right, basically, yeah.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I guess this is the end then. I don't know how long we've been talking.
Yeah, about an hour and a half. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, I guess let's wrap it up then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the plan is I will be writing a short blog and I will embed the playlist, the Spotify playlist that we compile with all these albums and songs. And you'll probably be listening for weeks, months, maybe years.
Yeah.
The amount of songs that we're going to add. So,
I'll try to be succinct with my playlist.
yeah, I got to narrow mine down because I'm already at like a couple days worth of like added albums. So like, oh, no. If you like this video, like it. And if you want to see more content like this, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Check out my playlist that I've created. There's one playlist with my own personal stories about communication, and then the other playlist includes interviews with smart people talking to me about their experiences with communication in different forms. So check that out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being on my channel, Frank. This has been fun.
Yes.
Say bye-bye to everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks again, Aisha.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.